Councilmember Husnick,
Here.
Councilmember Munson,
Here.
Councilmember Byström,
Here.
and Councilmember Valento.
Here.
Thank you. Before well, the next thing we're going to do is the Pledge of Allegiance. So if able, please stand.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get into our agenda, it saddens me to talk about losing one of our police officers here over the weekend in a tragic accident. Mr. Kolosh, he was an officer here, I think, for 14 years in the city of Forest Lake. Plus, he had worked for Washington County. So I would like to ask everyone to give us a minute of silence for this young man. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. Next item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Anyone care to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor of the motion to approve the agenda? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, number 5 is our open forum. Is it, Dan, do we have anybody signed up or? Barb?
Hello, acting mayor and members of council. Thank you for being here tonight and for allowing me a few minutes. I'm Barb Pribble, and I live at 21930 Harrow Avenue in Forest Lake. I live on Castlewood Golf Course, and most of you have probably seen me up here many, many times over the years promoting the positive community asset that we have, that is Castlewood. So I just wanted to share a few thoughts tonight. First, I wanted to acknowledge and thank the city for approving the 5-year contract for Foursome Golf Management. I want to acknowledge that Zach and his crew are doing a nice job out there, and there's definitely been an increased number of people playing out there. And the thing that I've noticed is that I used to be able to be in the backyard and kind of recognize everybody that was out there playing, and I don't recognize half the people out there now. And I will be out playing around myself, and I'll overhear people saying, oh gosh, 35W was just a real traffic, coming up here. And then there's another couple that said, oh yeah, we come up here all the time from White Bear Lake because we just love this course. So I know they're doing a cross promotion where you get a coupon for the St. Paul courses if you play at Castlewood, and it's vice versa. If you play at the St. Paul courses, you get a coupon for Castlewood. So I think that kind of cross promotion and the marketing efforts that they're doing is having a big impact in terms of really increasing the rounds out there. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little apprehensive about whether or not that was going to continue to be the case this year, because last year, of course, was COVID and nobody could do anything but golf. So it made sense that rounds were up. But now this year, people are out and about and are doing things and other things other than golf. And believe me, they're still out there golfing at Castlewood. So thank you for extending that contract. Then secondly, I wanted to thank the city for the recent investments that they've been doing out there. They repaired some cart paths, which were in long-term need of repair. They put some new sand in the sand traps. I don't know what happens to the sand and if it degrades over time or what happens to it, but apparently they needed some new sand. And then they took care of taking down the old dilapidated split rail fence along Harrow Avenue and then kept the one on 97, but fixed that so that it's no longer every other one is broken. So I wanted to acknowledge that very positive improvements happen out there. So as for the proposed clubhouse that's on the agenda tonight, I personally would love to see a new clubhouse out there. And I know that, one of the biggest concerns here is you're looking at a price tag of a little over $110,000 according to Administrator Casey's cover letter. And what I just kind of want to remind the council, or for some of you who may be newer and may not be as familiar with the course, but the city's been pretty much hands-off on the course as far as investments in the course really over the last 17 years. And I can't speak to before that because I haven't lived here before that. But if I'm reading the city's comprehensive annual financial reports correctly, from 2004 to 2013, the city had a separate enterprise fund for the golf course, and the total expenses that the city paid for the golf course over 10 years were $97,500. And so that's really an average of about less than $10,000 a year. And to my knowledge, those, from what I heard from former operators, those were really limited maintenance projects and not any investments in the course. And by contrast then, the city had this highly unusual advantage. I don't think any other city anywhere has probably had this, but they had private investment in that course to the tune of about $200,000 from 2007 to 2019. First, when Jim Trudeau came in and put, a ton of investments in, and then J.T. Walker Enterprises continued that. And as Jim Trudeau would always say, I can't take any of those improvements with me. I mean, they were there and they improved the course. That was, new sand bunkers and elimination of other bunkers. They literally took water hazards out in some of the holes, which is not a small job. New landscaping, all the signage that's out there, the little pro shop that's there, they paid for that. City didn't pay for any of that. That was $200,000 of private investment. So what I'm saying is, without that private investment over the years, the course, we wouldn't be seeing this amount of traffic out there because the course would have continued to be in pretty bad shape and nobody would want to be playing out there. And so, it's the success where it is today and on path for further success because of that private investment. So the way I look at it now is that the city has a great opportunity to build on that private investment with some investment of their own to help it be successful. And I know the Park and Rec Commission has, talked a lot about the potential of the clubhouse, and I watched that meeting, and I found it pretty interesting that Commission Chair Terry Steenblock said at that meeting she'd done some social media research, just really kind of quickly, and that people would post, where do we go snowshoeing, where can we go cross-country skiing, and of course we sent them everywhere but Forest Lake. And then people said, where do we go for outdoor fun in Forest Lake? And they said, oh, go to Maple Grove, do this. And all the responses were continually sending people out of the community for winter fun, whether that be cross-country skiing or snowshoeing. And I know the park board did have a contract out there in 2013 with Washington County to groom the trails, but I just don't really know whatever happened to that because it just kind of died off. So, and then lastly, to the final point, I was outside mowing my lawn last Tuesday, and I heard a clap of thunder, and then there was some lightning, and it was the kids' league, and so there was 100 little kids running out there, and they were little. I mean, some of these are 6 and 7, and there's an adult on each cart with each foursome, and all the little kids had to climb around the carts and rush back. Well, where did they go? I don't know where they went. Like Stella's wasn't open because it's not open for lunch. I don't know if they could all fit in the tiny little clubhouse. And so maybe they went to the maintenance shed, or maybe they just stood under the patio at Stella's. But, you know, there's a real safety concern out there from a weather perspective that there's just not even any, you know, severe weather shelter. People can come to my house, but that might be hard. And then, so beyond all those, and other people will speak to other things, then I have one final idea, that if the council does approve the new Castlewood, which I would love to see, if it does, I would really like to encourage the city to consider naming it or dedicating it in honor of Jim Trudeau. And I'm assuming most of you know, but Jim Trudeau, of course, was our chief of police here for 12 years. He was Washington County Sheriff for 15 years. He founded what's now the Lake Center for Youth and Families in 1977 and gave back tremendously to the community through that program. He was, of course, Forest Lake native, won a ton of awards, and he loved Castlewood because it was in his family since 1935. His grandfather owned the course, operated as a golf course. Then during the war, they raised turkeys because there was nobody out there golfing. And then his grandfather, I think, eventually sold it. But he had such a soft spot in his heart for that course, and particularly for kids. That's why when the city needed somebody to run the place and literally nobody was interested, you know, he stepped up to the plate and said, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to take a dime in salary. I'm going to put everything we have back into this course, and I'm going to get kids out here and get paid in smiles. So I did put a quick little letter of support up at the clubhouse, and I have 92 signatures in support of naming it in honor of him. About 48 or half of those are from Forest Lake. The others are from neighboring communities such as Lino Lakes, Hugo, Wyoming, Centerville, who most of those individuals probably knew who Jim was too, and the fabulous job he did. So I probably went over my 3 minutes, but there's not too many people here waiting, so sorry. So thank you for your time and your commitment to keeping Castlewood a great family-friendly amenity in our community.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Can I give these signatures to somebody?
But Patrick would be great, yeah. Now, Barb was the only one that was on the list for open forum. Anyone else care to speak?
Yes.
Please give us your name and address, sir, and go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, council, member council. I'm Mark Smith, 2120 Otter Lake Drive. I appreciate you allowing the open forum. I'm here tonight because I'm aware that in 3 weeks you guys are having a meeting regarding development standards and building standards in the city, and I was hoping I could provide some examples of what I've done in the city and other cities and that have worked really well and have created a great housing environment for those communities. Your current development and engineering standards don't allow even you to come close to what your zoning is. For example, I have property that's zoned for 3 to 5 and 6 to 10 units per acre, and with your current building standards, you can't get more than 3 units per acre because of your 9,000 square foot pads, et cetera. So even a villa on an 80-foot lot, that's not the idea behind a villa. I called the city engineer of Andover, who I'm friends with, and I asked him about this additional 10-foot, or it's actually a 20-foot extra right-of-way on your streets. And he said, I'd heard of some cities doing that before, but he said it's really unusual, and he'd never allow it in the city because it's a lot more bituminous surface, and who wants to have your utilities 25 feet from the street? If you have a problem in the wintertime, they got to go up, dig up your yard in the winter or the summertime. And out of curiosity, I asked them, how many building permits have you had in the city of Andover this year? And they said 80. So it gave me an idea, so I called Blaine, and I asked how many building permits they had in Blaine. It was 250, and this is all since January to June 30th. I called Lino Lakes, they had 143. I called North Branch, they had 65. So then I called Forest Lake, and I called and never got an answer. I finally kept hitting buttons, and I got a hold of somebody, and they said if I wanted to get that answer, I'd have to file a Freedom of Information form, which I'm like, what? But anyways, for real, that really happened. But Donovan did tell me there was 20 building permits pulled in the city, 20 in the best year for building in 50 years, where cities like North Branch have 65 and Lino Lakes have 143. So it tells me there's something wrong with the zoning or the building code that you have here, or your standards don't work if you want to keep building homes and providing rooftops for the businesses here. 2 weeks ago, I met with Donovan and Ryan, and I brought a plan in that showed on my property that I owned there behind Menards. It had 63 villas, 56 twin homes, one apartment building for a total of 229 homes on that site on 60 acres of upland, which comes to about 3.8 units per acre. It's a great plan. I have copies if anyone wants to see it. Donovan seemed interested or intrigued, but afterwards he said, we're not going to change our standards to accommodate this type of housing here. So basically, he told me I had to get rid of the apartment and get rid of about half the units. So I have 77 units now on 60 upland acres, about 1.28 units per acre. And again, you can see this is the problem, not enough density to justify even doing a development there. Just better off waiting until things change at the city or they change their standards. And that's also over an acre of extra bituminous surface, enough to park over 200 cars. So a lot of wasted hard surfaces being put in place just because somebody likes streets. I've done over 1,400 lots over my time of building and developing, 900 luxury townhomes, which I plan to do on this site. I set up super strong associations, great covenants, and my developments always look great. I mean, if you go to any, and I have a list of those developments, I gave that list to Donovan and Ryan to go look at. I'd be happy to give them to the council and hope that before your meeting you get a chance to look at some of those because they are beautiful. Even some of those that I've done 30 years ago look as good today as they did when I built them. And they sell, even during the bad times, they would sell within a week, these homes that I've built during that time, because there's a huge market for the empty nester there. They've been living in Forest Lake, they love Forest Lake, they don't want to leave, but if there's nothing for them to do afterwards, they have to go to Blaine, they have to go to some other city that wants to do one-level living. So if you're interested in that, I'd be happy to help you and assist at that workshop. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Thank you. Was there anyone else care to speak? Okay, we'll close the open forum portion of the meeting tonight. And I was also asked to just put something in between here and the consent agenda. Last week we had a closed session to evaluate the Patrick Casey's performance over the last couple of years, and we spent about 2.5 hours talking about it, and picked out some good things and some things that we felt that needed to be changed and improved on. And also there was some question about the survey itself and the paperwork and that kind of thing. So once that 2.5 hour session was complete, as far as we were concerned, we had Patrick come in and we told him what we were looking at and probably beat him up a little tiny bit. So anyways, that's what happened here this last week, and that particular portion is done. So thank you. Next item on our agenda is a consent agenda. And what I'm asking is that we pull consent agenda item 6E. So based on that, I'd make a motion that we approve the consent agenda 6A, B, C, D, F, and G.
I'll second it.
Any other comments? Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. The reason I wanted to pull 6E in this is there's, in this agreement, the Washington County Community Development Block Grant Agreement, Corporation Agreement, there's a couple of small typos in the contract, so it's an amendment to the, like Karen described, it's kind of an amendment to the amendment, and so there's a couple little typo corrections. So, Peter, if you would want to expand on that, we'd appreciate it.
Sure, Acting Mayor Husnick, members of council. In the current posture, I would recommend that the council approve item 6E subject to minor modifications approved by the city attorney. That way we have the authority to clean up the typos.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone care to make that motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve item 6E on the consent agenda per the attorney's recommendations to make the modifications or the amendments to the agreement.
I'll second it. We have a motion, and it's been seconded. Any other comments? All in favor of the motion, please? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay, on to the regular agenda item 7A, PMA financial presentation. Sandy, I believe you're going to be doing that for us.
afternoon. I do have two guests from PMA, Mercy and Corey, who is actually going to do the presentation for you. I thought I'd invite them back because of the changes in our economy, the changes in the investments, and how that's going to affect those quarterly reports ongoing. And I think we're going to have Corey and Mercy describe what strategy they're going to use to make sure we're not actually getting a negative, even though it's showing on the quarterly reports. It's just an accounting standard that we have to abide by, but they just are going to explain where the economy is and where our portfolio is and the strategy behind it. So I'll invite Corey and Mercy over here, and they can introduce themselves.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Andy, and I appreciate the chance to come out, council, and give you an update again. And we were talking as we came in. It's been a while since we've actually been in the building. I think we had met virtually not too long ago, and then before that it was pre-pandemic. I think that we were in City Hall, so it's good to be back. Give you a quick update on your portfolio, and Mercy's going to go into a lot more detail specific with the city's portfolio. Obviously, as Sandy mentioned, it's a difficult investment environment right now. It has been for some time. And just one thing I wanted a quick update before we turn it over to Mercy to get into more detail on the portfolio is, as many of you probably know on the council, PMA is the administrator for the League of Minnesota Cities 4M Fund program. And so we're seeing a lot of this impact on city investment portfolios throughout the state. And it's a challenge for a lot of cities that are trying to obviously rely on some of these interest revenues in their budgets. And so it is an ongoing challenge throughout the state. It's something that we're constantly working on. You know, one thing, I guess, as a positive, back in April, the League of Minnesota Cities did approve PMA as the full investment advisor for the fund as well. And so prior to that, there was a sub-advisor agreement, but at this point now, back on April 15th, the League did approve PMA to serve in that role for the fund. And so we're excited for that, to kind of expand that relationship with the fund and with the League. The nice thing for the city to know is that the same team, Mercy and the team working on the 4M Fund portfolios, are also the same team that is working on the city's individual portfolios. So they obviously understand some of the challenges in the market. They understand the public sector very well in the state. And so hopefully that will bear fruit as we move forward and the market hopefully improves here in the near future. So with that, I will turn it over to Mercy, and she can get into more detail on the city's portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you so much, council members, for having me here. So I'll try to be quick. And if we can move to the next slide. So first and foremost, the US economy is doing very well. We're coming out from a pandemic. Definitely you'll see some numbers as I will show. Labor market is doing well. We'll talk about the economy because definitely the economy drives interest rates and where interest rates are. Now the big issue is interest rates have been at historical lows, as you all know, because of where we are at. Interest rates remain low, anchored by the Fed. And that has been an issue for most cities, most government entities, because they are earning a lower interest rates on their short-term cash. So with that, before I go into the economy, let's talk about the portfolio here. If you look on the left, that is where the assets for the city were when we took over the account. As you can see, there was quite a bit of cash, 1%, and 51% in CDs, and 48% in municipal. So really less diversified, concentrated on just those three sectors. What we've done with the portfolio is made it more diverse, as you can see on the far left, on the far right, where it's more diversified. We have more sectors. We have cash, we have US Treasuries, US agencies, agency mortgage-backed securities, and those have the full faith and guarantee of the US government. And then we have municipal bonds. Bear in mind, we looked at the state statute, dig through and understand what the requirements are. And then we also looked at the city policy statement. And all these investments do meet those requirements for state statute and the city's investment policy. As you can see, really our goal has been to manage the portfolio to enhance return and reduce risk. That is what we have done by diversifying a little bit more, focusing more on top, higher quality US Treasury agencies and the municipal bonds. On the far right, the small table on the far right shows book yield. As you can see, book yield, your earning in the portfolio is about 1.68%. And the index, we use a US government agency treasury index, it's about 0.32. So really, the portfolio continues to earn more than the index, and that's because you do have some high yielding securities in there, and we'll talk a little bit more as we go forward. Market yield, definitely yields have come lower, and that's why you see it at 0.47 compared to the index at 0.31. So we are still ahead, and this continues to drive income, and we'll talk about, like Sandy said, the total return. Duration, we try to match ourselves to the 1 to 5 year US Treasury. Duration is about 2.5, so it means the securities will mature in 2.5 years. Overall, credit quality is at AA minus. As you can see, the index made up of US Treasuries is at AAA. So really high quality portfolio that meets state statutes and policy statement guidelines. So overall, we continue to align ourselves and manage the portfolio to meet the city's requirements. And we are in communication with Sandy continuously to know what their needs are. If they need money, they can pull money out. If they don't, we continue to invest money for the city. On the next slide, it just shows over history since 2019 when you took over what we've been doing with the portfolio. Like I said, in the beginning, we were highly concentrated in 3 sectors, cash, agencies, and CDs. And as you can see on the far left, as of July 31st, the portfolio is well diversified. We have different 5 sectors in there, including munis, mortgage-backed securities. We can invest in commercial paper, but at this time they don't pay. We don't feel compensated by buying corporations or commercial paper, so we don't have any at this time. But bottom line, portfolio remains well diversified, meeting state statute and policy statements. In terms of maturity distribution, we are well distributed. This shows everything that's going to mature inside of the next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. So really diverse. If the city needed money, they could take 1.8 million in the next 3 months. If they don't need it, we continue to reinvest to make sure we're earning money for the city's assets. So this is really our maturity distribution based on the securities that we are buying in the portfolio. The next slide is a performance overview. So we do show quarter to date, which is second quarter only for the month of July. We have quarter to date, year to date, prior year, and then since inception. And as you can see on the far right, we have continued to beat the index, the 1 to 5. We have excess returns. If you look at the long-term frame, which is since inception, about 81 basis points above the index. So really continue to beat the market based on the circumstances and the current economic environment. But overall, I want you to think about total return. Total return is made up of an income component, which is your book yield. That is what you earn on your assets. But there is also a price component. When interest rates go up, prices drop. So you have that piece. And if that piece is bigger than your income, that's where you end up with a negative total return. But really, it doesn't mean you have negative income. It just means the price impact was large and overwhelmed the income component. But definitely, as you go through time, you will always have positive income, but the price income, depending on where interest rates are, this is going to drive returns as we go forward. Now, given that interest rates are rising in the US, we will continue to see a larger impact on that price return. It's going to continue to drop because rates are rising. But if you think about it over time, as long as we have securities maturing, as I showed here, we can take those maturities if the city does not need it and invest it out longer. So as interest rates continue to rise, you're earning because you're investing in more income, even though your price return is taking a hit. So you're kind of short-term pain for long-term gain. And that's pretty much because of where interest rates are. It's out of our control. This is what the market is giving to us. And then in terms of the economy, because we've said, interest rates are determined by the economy and where the economy is going. As you can see on the far left, it shows share of people vaccinated against COVID-19. COVID continues to determine the outlook for US GDP. As you can see, Israel continues to lead the way. They were almost at 58% fully vaccinated. And you can see US is also among the top 10 with almost 55% fully vaccinated as of the end of July. So I think this will continue to drive the outlook for US economy. But that said, the pace of recovery will be different across different areas. Here in the US, globally as well, but we think the US is ahead of the curve and will continue to see higher interest rates because growth has continued to be robust in the US. On the far right, that is the US GDP. We took a hit back in 2020 when we had the pandemic. GDP was at 4.3%. And now you're seeing for 2021, consensus expectations are for GDP to be 6% here in the US. So really robust growth in the US. And the US will continue to drive the world GDP growth because They have had mass vaccinations and continued improvements with the vaccines coming out. So I think US will be a leader going forward in terms of economic growth. The next slide just looks deep down into the minutiae about growth. If you look on the far left, that is US non-farm payrolls. We look at the past 10 years. And if you can see, since February 2010 through February of 2020, the US added 22.8 million jobs during the last robust expansion. Once the pandemic hit, beginning February 2020 through April of 20, we lost 22.4 million jobs. And as you can see thus far, since April 2020 through the end of July 2021, we've added 15.6 million. That is a 70% recovery. So the US continues to see robust growth in the labor market. On the far right, it just goes into deep dive into each of the sectors. As you can see, leisure and hospitality was the worst hit sector. They lost almost 8.3 million jobs during the pandemic. They recovered 70%. But generally, the gray line shows jobs lost. The blue line shows recovery. And as you can see, across all sectors, the US continues to see significant recovery among each of the sectors. That said, we do believe risks do exist, especially related to the Delta variant. We think it will be limited and not as bad as it was before. So we think we might see some slowdown here in economic growth, but nothing as bad as where we were. So we think the US is in a better position than most countries going forward. In terms of inflation, this is a major risk in the market. Everybody, I'm sure when you go to the groceries, when you're paying rent, whatever, gas, everything is going high. We've seen inflation gauges going up. The gray line is the Fed's preferred gauge. Their target is 2%. And as you can see, we are talking 4.0% in PCE as of end of July. And the core, which excludes food and energy, is at 3.5. So really, inflation is rising, but we think it's because of pent-up demand. We're coming from a pandemic where we were all locked up, not spending. There's pent-up demand, people out there spending, trying to catch up. So we think a little bit of it is pent-up demand. And the other factor to it is supply chain bottlenecks. We've had difficulties, companies are having difficulties, whether it's finding laborers or finding materials, whether it's in the auto industry. So we are seeing a little bit of supply bottlenecks, which continues to drive inflation higher. On the far left, on the far right, it shows wage inflation. This is something we monitor because overall, if wage inflation goes high, it might mean inflation will remain at a sustained level. We've seen, when you look at the green line, that's the US average hourly earnings. That number picked up a little bit as employers were trying to, they raised wages trying to lure laborers to come back. So that's why you saw an uptick in inflation. We don't think this is going to be permanent. We think there is influence from the pandemic. Once we hit normal, back to normal, and everybody feels comfortable, they're going out and looking for employment. Employment benefits expire soon. We believe everybody will come out and we'll see a further improvement in the labor market, which should help inflation sustain a little bit. On the bottom is inflation expectations. Generally, the market will try to forecast where they think inflation expectations are. We show you where the 2-year, the 5-year, and 10-year, where the market thinks inflation will be at. If you look at the 10-year, the market is saying, we don't believe this is going to continue. We don't think inflation will be sustained. We think it will go back to temporary once we hit the normal levels of growth. And we believe this is starting to seep into the economy already. So once we get to a normal level, we think inflation will be back to normal levels. If you think about it, before the expansion really, or before the pandemic, inflation was at below 2%, 1.8, 1.9%. Nothing has changed in terms of demographics. Nothing has changed in terms of technology. If anything, technology continues to improve how we work, how we function, how we shop. So we think overall inflation will continue to go lower as we go here into 2022, 2023. Fed policy continues to drive short-term interest rates, and this is the impact I was talking about to everybody's portfolio. As long as the Fed continues to hold interest rates lower, bank accounts, each and every person, whether it's the city, counties, governments, they will continue to see or experience lower income on the short end. So pretty much this is a dot plot of the Fed's meeting. When they met in July, they vote. Each of the yellow dots is the Fed and where they think the Fed funds projection will be at. The green line is the median. So as you can see, based on the July meeting, the median is saying there will be 2 hikes in 2023. If you compare to where they were back in March the Fed had met and the median was showing no hikes in interest rates until 2024. So what this tells us is the economy continues to provide good indicators, solid indicators. We're seeing inflation rising, we're seeing labor market improving. If you can imagine, back in June, we added 938,000 jobs here in the US. Just last month in July, we added 900, almost 1 million jobs here in the US. So labor continues to drive, economic data continues to drive how the Fed is viewing and when they're going to raise interest rates. So at this point, the Fed is saying they will likely raise interest rates in early 2023, which will be a good thing for everybody and their savings account and deposits for ones. And the city will feel a little bit better from that retrieval. So we are looking forward to when the Fed will change their stance. The next slide really speaks to interest rates. This is where interest rates were. If you look at the gray line, that is where interest rates were back in July of 2020. And then interest rates rose, and you can see the dark blue line, that is where we were immediately after the pandemic, or as of April of this year. So what this is telling us is there is growth. There will be growth. The long end of the Treasury curve is driven by growth expectations and inflation expectations. Now, if you look at the dotted line, that is where the market is forecasting interest rates to be next year in July. So the market is saying, we think growth will start to stabilize and go back to that 2%, 3% where we were before the pre-pandemic. Although we've enjoyed 6.2%, 6.5% in the last 2 quarters, they think growth will come down a little bit, which will drive the long end a little bit lower. Now, on the short end, the market is saying, we think we've had enough of good data, good economic data, and we think the Fed will move sooner than they're saying. Just because we have inflation, we have good labor market indicators, the market is saying interest rates should be rising because we are in a robust market environment. So again, the Fed continues to anchor interest rates lower because they want to see sustained progress in the labor market. They're thinking where we are right now is not enough. They want to see more improvement in the labor market. So bottom line is interest rates will continue to be low for a while, at least for 2021 and some of 2022, but we believe by 2023 we should start seeing interest rates rise, assuming the economy continues to pick up steam and the labor market continues to be strong here in the US. We have our market outlook. I'll leave you with that to just read as something to look at on the end, but I'll just mention a few, maybe 2 items here that really, we think government spending and monetary policy will continue to support markets and continue to support the economy for the rest of 2021. We believe this economy will be uneven. We will see uneven recovery among industries, among sectors, among individuals, based on wealth, based on income, but we believe outperformance for assets or portfolios will be driven by security selection and asset allocation. It is very important to be in the market, pay attention to what is going on, because we believe there are some companies that will outperform and there are some companies that will go under, given what we've gone through with the pandemic. We believe inflation surprises, anticipated changes in liquidity, and Fed policy will continue to be catalysts for interest rate volatility in the market this year. As markets continue to play around and front run the Fed, we think interest rates will continue to bounce up and down, but we will be range bound, and interest rates on the short end will remain low at least through 2021. And with that, I will pause for any questions you might have for me, council members.
Well, thank you very much. Sounds
Thank
like a
you.
very thorough. Anyone have any questions or comments?
Thank you.
Sound like positive, some positive things out there, so. Thank you very much. And do we need to approve this at all?
No. This was for your information.
Yeah, okay. All right, thanks. It was under action items, so. Okay. Item 7B, Resolution 082321-01, $1,000 donation from the Forest Lake VFW Post 4210. Dan or
Do this
Patrick,
one
did
real
you
quick.
wanna-
This one was Jamie's. She's not here this evening, but
Okay, sure.
this was a donation from the VFW for the Veterans Memorial Park.
Okay.
And so it's recommended that council accepts this donation with
Okay.
gratitude.
Well, thank you. With that, I'll make a motion that we accept Resolution 0823-21-01, $1,000 donation from Forest Lake VFW Post 4210 for the Veterans Memorial Park Fund with gratitude.
I'll second.
Any other comments? All right, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Motion carries. 7C, the resolution 082321-02, the reinstatement of the local Board of Appeal and Equalization. Karen, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yep, so this was brought to you guys, a couple meetings back, about the local Board of Appeals. Back in 2020, the local Board of Appeal meeting, which deals with property taxes, was brought back to the county, on the county level, because of the pandemic, us being shut down, not really having a place to host those meetings. And once that's given back to the county, then by statute, they're required to hold that meeting for 2 years. So they also did the meetings this year. They're held in April. And now the county is wanting us to take that back. I brought this forward to council to get an idea of what does council want to do with this? Do we want to bring this back to the local level? It sounded like the overwhelming agreement was yes, we want to do that. So this resolution will allow that. We have to do it by resolution, and then there also has to be proof that shows that at least one member of council is trained in holding those meetings. And so what you have in your packet is the resolution for that, and then also that 3 of you have done the training. 1 of you has turned in the certificate, that's in the packet. And so that's what council would be voting on. So it's recommended to council that you would approve this resolution to bring that local board meeting back into Forest Lake.
And as I recall, that was something we wanted to do, right? We wanted to get it back to the, and so, sounds like we meet all the qualifications, so anyone care to comment on it further?
I don't think so. Acting Mayor Husnick, I move adoption of Resolution 08-23-01-02, a resolution for the reinstatement of the Forest Lake Local Board of Appeal and Equalization.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the motion for the resolution. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item is 7D, the Castlewood Golf Course Club update. And Patrick, you're gonna,
Sure will. Before you, we presented a memo to the council regarding an update of the Castlewood Golf Course proposed building, which has been at times much controversial, but in staff's opinion is still a needed building to help improve and to further enhance the golf experience and the participation at the golf course. Included in your packet is just for your reference, is a petition signed by 172 people that support the golf course. And also included in that packet was what the Plan Commission reviewed at their 2 meetings ago. The plan for the golf course has gone before both the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Committee and the Plan Commission, and both came out with unanimous recommendations. The clubhouse was purchased almost a year from last year with funds, and we're asking to come back to complete the project and put the building up and eventually finish it over 6 to 12 months, depending on how fast we can get that together. We have overcome some of the obstacles and some of the objections to the building by the local property owner. Came to an agreement, which we'd never had in the past, for parking. Came to an agreement, official agreement, written agreement for a lease on this current clubhouse, which we never had. So we've tried to address all concerns regarding the clubhouse as far as the building goes. We also included or have clarified that we're not going to put a full-service restaurant in, as was rumored. We're not going to put a full-service bar in, as was rumored. It's going to be just a clubhouse for the golf course and a possibly expansion to other recreational facility, whether that is snowshoeing or cross-country skiing in the winter. That is yet to be determined. That's yet to be budgeted for. That's yet to be even talked about or analyzed. And before we do that, include any new programming besides that, we will have to go back and look and see if it breaks even. Any recreational programs, most recreational programs, look to break even or make a little bit of money so they can subsidize other things. There are a few exceptions to that, like outdoor swimming pools or things like that never make, but programming itself in the recreation business is usually based on a break-even basis. And if it doesn't break even, it doesn't exist. So if we go into, let's just say for an example, cross-country skiing and it's not profitable, we probably will discontinue that at some point. The plan also considers contracting with Foursome Golf, who has a 5-year contract for the management of possibly expanding golfing into the winter, fall seasons with electronic simulators. Again, that has to be talked to and with the Foursome Golf. In their 5-year contract, we did state in there's a paragraph that says if we construct a new building that we have the right to reopen that contract and talk about the future. I would recommend that we don't own simulators, that the Foursome Golf will own those, and we'll have some kind of percentage payment, but that's yet to be addressed. So the bottom line is that we're requesting council to fund $112,000 for finishing the building. The building, we have quotes on majority of these items. What's not included in here is any of the credits that we may get by using internal staff to do some of the construction, whether that's finishing the work inside, whether it's putting the toilets, whatever the case may be. Dave and I have had a conversation about how much we can do. If we do more in-house, that number, we won't spend that number, it'll come down. That will only happen if we have the opportunity and the time to do it. We won't sacrifice cutting grass or plowing snow, but we'll keep, if we can find the time, we'll do some of the work ourselves. So we're asking for $112,000, and the memo proposes that it be funded in this way. We know that the golf course is having a great year. We've talked to them extensively about what they're doing and how they're doing it, and we anticipate, as you know, that we have a $50,000 guaranteed profit for the golf course operator. Talking to them the last few weeks and looking at some of their early results, we believe that that won't be any bigger than $10,000. Last year we paid them some around $15,000 subsidy. We even think it may be nothing, but we can't tell that until the season's over. So if it is truly $10,000 this year and it gets even better next year, we're estimating that it'll only be $10,000 in 2022. We budgeted $50,000 in the budget. We can reduce that and use that savings in the budget of $40,000 for the fiscal year 2021 and $40,000 in the year fiscal 22 to help fund that construction without having a negative budget impact. We're not asking for no new money, it's already budgeted for. The second part of that is to implement what's called a surcharge on golf. In some recreation circles, the thought is again, it should be self-sustaining, that a recreation program should be paid for by the participants. That's where the surcharge possibly comes in. We're recommending a surcharge of $2 per round. However, I do have to commend the speaker this afternoon, tonight, talking about capital improvements and how little the city has done at the golf course. And they really, until this year, we haven't done a lot. We've done hit or miss. We've helped repair. There's been no solid capital improvement program or capital investment in the golf course. Even though we contract out the operation of the golf course, we still own the golf course, and we should be responsible for its upkeep. It's no different than a senior building housing senior centers. It's no different than this building that we're responsible, we own it. We are on the path to try to correct that as we go along. Again, like most everything we do here, it's baby steps and incremental because we have so many needs in so many different ways. We have to try to catch up with our infrastructure. And I would argue that the golf course is an infrastructure. So the capital needs are great. We know that we did the sand traps this year. I think the building is another capital need and important for The golf course futures, as mentioned, we also would like to have some kind of a shelter out there that protects people from lightning and rain, and if that's possible. And we know that there's other future things that are going to come, whether it's new trees, new fencing. The irrigation system sooner or later is going to have to be budgeted for because it's old and it's got a lot of leaks and it has to be manually turned on and manually turned off, and it's difficult. So there's a number of things that we're trying to plan on, just like everything else we do in some kind of a ordered sequence. But we're not addressing those needs right now. What we're addressing is the need for a clubhouse that I believe will not impact any business negatively. Actually, I believe it'll be a positive. We bring more people there, the more overflow there's going to be, the more opportunity for cross-selling or sponsorships or whatever the case may be. And I believe that the building will only increase the revenue from the golf course and make it a self-sustaining operation where we don't have to worry year to year to year about subsidies. And that's really what the goal is here. It's not to make a profit, because we won't make a big profit. If we were profit motivated, we'd hire our own person and put them on staff to run the golf course and try to make a profit that way, but that's just not realistic. So I recommend that the council pass and allocate the $112,000 that we're requesting, and let us go forward and put that building up and start to finish the interiors through the winter and spring of next year. If you have questions, I'll be happy to address whatever you would like to know.
Well, Patrick, did you address some of the concerns that, with the neighbor there? He had several things. We just got this paper tonight,
Oh,
so.
yes, I'm sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
We did get a whole bunch of questions. I think it was like 4:30 on Friday.
Yeah.
We saw them this morning. We were a little busy this morning with another matter. However, we did respond as best we could and with the information that we had on hand. So you have a copy of that on your dais to look at the questions that were asked and the responses that we provided.
So Patrick, I have a couple of questions. Just to clarify, those first two bullet points on the remaining budget portion of the project, $40,000 for 2021 and $40,000 for 2022.
Yes.
That's the $50,000 we hold
Yes.
that we don't anticipate having to be fully responsible for because we're having such a good golf season, and, you know.
That's correct. Based on last year's performance where we only had to pay $15,000, and based on current year performance through July that we had a talk with the operator, we believe that we probably will only be obligated for a maximum of $10,000 this year. And without trying to get too optimistic, we just left that for the 2022 season. I don't think it's going to be more than that, but, you know, 10,000 seems reasonable. That would give us 40,000 again for 2021 to use and 40,000 in 2022 without disrupting the budget that has been adopted and we will be proposing shortly.
And then a couple of kind of building questions here. Does this building have one or two restrooms?
It originally had one, but I think that we're going to modify that because two makes a lot more sense.
Okay. And then the other question I had is I noticed there's like a 12-foot wide path from the clubhouse to the parking lot. Is that bituminous?
Right now, it's gravel. Retain that gravel path as it is, you know, with the filings from the road. If we find an opportunity to either put concrete or bituminous down, we will do so. But we're tending right now to leave it a gravel path.
I just was wondering, do we have any ADA issues there? Are there any?
No, that's a pretty solid path. So,
Okay.
you know, if it was mushy, I don't think it gets mushy. It's been there for a very long time and it's probably had a lot of stone put over it over the years and has a tendency to pack down. So I don't believe there's an ADA issue. The ADA issue is making sure that they can get into the building, and
Right.
we have to do that and we'll do that.
because I know that we, we're talking a little bit about the potential for some multi-purpose use with that
Yes.
building. So we would want to be sure that access, was addressed. I would
Yeah,
think,
and
too.
if we find that we can save enough money to pave it somehow, we will do so within that budget.
I think there's,
Just keep going.
sure, well, go ahead, yeah.
Or,
Let's-
just.
let's get the
rest
questions out there.
council, Yeah.
Can I ask one quick question, because it's based off of what you
Sure.
just asked? Can you just clarify for me, Patrick, when you say 2 restaurants, are you,
Restrooms.
restrooms, okay, thank you. I don't-
Yeah.
Okay. I
No,
need to
just
wear my
to
hearing
make sure on
aids.
the restaurant,
I was like, I don't think that's what I heard.
there is no restaurant.
No.
That's what I was like, wait a minute. Well, good, now I clarified that even further for folks.
There is no bar,
Um,
period.
And then I'm really struggling with the surcharge here, with the budget. I recognize the need for a capital improvement revenue stream.
Yes.
We're pretty limited
Yes,
where
we are.
capital improvement revenue streams are concerned. But I'm concerned about unintended consequences with that. And, our people are already paying taxes, in this community, so I'm really struggling with that, especially if we don't have an opportunity to have a conversation with them first, and maybe poll them a little bit. I mean, I'd hate to come out after, if we happen to approve this tonight, and suddenly we're charging them an extra $2 a round of golf. I would really prefer we maybe step back from that, and try to find another source
Sure.
for that. And I know that a while ago, we talked about having a relatively healthy fund balance. And this feels like it's not too big of a dip. And then maybe we can kind of come back to the table about that revenue stream for capital improvements, and how can we work together with Zach and his team and our participants out there to make sure that we're getting that work done.
Yeah, just a few comments. As I mentioned earlier, the surcharge was meant for the golfers who use the facility to pay for the facility and those improvements. I would say that if we do that, we not put that on the juniors, but that's another matter altogether. As far as using fund balance, absolutely appropriate. You have a fund balance of 50% of the general fund, in the general fund particularly, a policy that says you have to have 50% of the appropriated funds in reserve, basically. You have 60%. You have probably close to $1 million, maybe a little bit more, which is good, rainy day funds. And the use of of fund balance, and I think I preached this before, you never use it for annual operating expenses, because it goes away eventually. You run out of fund balance. But it is a very appropriate use to use fund balance as a one-time revenue for a one-time expenditure. And if you say to me that you want to use $112,000 out of fund balance, it's a minuscule amount on your fund balance. It really is. It will take you from 60% to 58%, or sorry, I didn't do the math, but it's inconsequential as far as your fund balance goes. So if that's a direction that the council wants to go, I'd be happy to do that. It would make things actually a lot cleaner for us, that we don't have to worry about surcharges. It'd make it cleaner for the operator, that they don't have to keep the surcharge separate from the regular fees, but that's certainly a possibility. We have done that in the past for vehicles or something along that. This is a very appropriate use of fund balance as a one-time revenue for that expense.
Well, I could see this going 2 ways. We could, utilize 32, to kind of cover the cost of that surcharge. But then,
Sure.
another way to look at this potentially is, if we, and I'm one council member of 5 or 4 tonight, but, another way to look at this potentially would be, if we have those savings moving forward, if we're holding the 50,000 for the course 21-22, there's some potential to reinvest those dollars as well, maybe back into capital. Improvements,
Absolutely.
so-
I mean, if you want to do this hybrid, certainly I'm firm in the belief that we will get a $40,000 savings this year, and next year we could use that part, and then you could just use 30, like you said, 32,000 in fund balance, which is even, that's a real easy thing to do. You won't even, your fund balance won't even tick away for that, so. I mean, it's a good idea, really.
I think that's all the questions that I have.
Well, Kathy, that was a question I was going to ask you. I'm not a golfer, but a question would have been the surcharge and how everybody felt about that and where we're at and how do we compare with other public golf courses, you know? How do we compare it? mean,
I think we compare favorably. I think we're on the low side, but you have to remember we're a 9-hole course, so the rates are a little bit lower, but with the 9-hole course, you can't push that too much because it is a 9-hole course. You know, you're not
Right.
competing against 18, even though people can go around twice. I think we're in a good position to either leave it, if you decide to use fund balance, to leave it at that current rate or raise it $1. That's really up to the operator to see what they see as far as if there's need to raise revenue or not. That's a discussion we have at the end of the season with the operator to determine what the next year's rates are. Again, it would be cleaner for us to use fund balance. We'd take that whole discussion about raising rates, not at a surcharge, but only leave it at between the operator and the city on if it's appropriate and how we compare to the market. That's a much cleaner discussion for us, to be quite honest with you.
It does feel like it gets a little messy the other way.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Again, the
Yeah.
bookkeeping gets messy and the discussion gets messy because then with this $2 surcharge, are you limiting the operator's ability to raise revenue? Will that affect the profit margin? But it is cleaner if we would to eliminate that and go with the $32,000 in fund balance.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Just, so the vote tonight is to essentially finish the building that was started. None of the other stuff like simulators, and I'm saying this
No.
for the public's.
Now, the vote tonight would be to authorize the completion of the building based on this memo and authorize how you're going to pay for it. I mean, if you agree with the surcharge or you want to change that to make a motion to use $32,000 in fund balance.
Well, you know, for me, actually, I was wondering if Barb stole my notes for tonight, my summary notes, because she has just about every single one of my talking points. You know, as we're kind of wrapping up here, that, you know, COVID really brought people out of the woodwork, and we weren't sure we were going to be able to sustain that, but honestly, the numbers don't lie. I asked Zach for a couple of stats for us tonight. We've seen a 14.2% increase in total rounds to date, and the season isn't over. That's adults, seniors, leagues, and kids. And what does that mean in terms of hard numbers? At this point in time last year, we had 9,651 rounds played, and this year to date, we've had 11,026. So that's pretty significant growth. And we bumped our youth numbers thanks to a wonderful partnership with Community Ed with Forest Lake Schools from 22 kids to 82 kids. And I think that's phenomenal. It's wonderful to see young people out there spending time doing something positive.
Yeah, and not to brag on, but we were very fortunate to get Foursome Golf. They've done a tremendous job. And we've gone from a nice operation or kind of a homey operation with the prior operator and having no knowledge of how the course runs, no knowledge of the financial, to a course operator who is upfront with the financials, gives us monthly reports, and is selling the heck out of the course. And like the speaker said, trading it, you know, they have specials, $50 a day. $50 you can play all day long for as many holes as you want. Well, that'll bring some people out. Swapping it for, you know, if you play here, you can play one of the other courses they operate for a discount. Those are the things that the prior operator couldn't do. That's things the city couldn't do if we operated. We don't have other courses, we don't have that kind of thing. So we've come a very, very long way from when we were worried about even having a golf course. So, and I think this is just the next step in moving forward.
Well, I'd honestly argue that it's one of our most highly utilized parks in the city. You know,
Yeah,
Lakeside Park is very highly utilized, and I just feel strongly that it's worthy of our investment. And I think, a big piece of that for me is that it really aligns with our strategic goals as well in terms of investments in parks, trails, and lakes and quality of life for Forest Lake residents. And really honestly should be where we are aligning resources. So I just have to reconcile, how to pay for it.
Oh, that's always the
Yeah,
sticking,
yeah.
that's for sure.
Kathy, I have to agree with you. I'm not a golfer, but I think it's a great asset for the city of Forest Lake, and it's been around a long time, and it's open space and all kinds of good things about it. So, yeah, they're paying for it. But the other thing too, we've got a building laying there. We need to do something with it. Something's got to happen. So we got to make a decision on that and get it done. So.
I think Barb alluded to the storm too, and that was really a tipping point for
Yeah.
me a couple weeks ago when I'm watching lightning
Mhm.
and hearing thunder, and we've got 82 kids out on that golf course and nowhere for them to go.
Yeah,
That's
it
the
isn't
fact.
necessarily a storm that's going to blow the building away, but at least you can get out of the lightning.
Right.
That's the important thing. So,
So
any other discussion, any comments, or
that's all I have.
anyone care to make a motion for this item?
Well, actually, I do. Do we have to figure out how we're funding this first before we can make a motion?
You should
the
include
search.
the funding mechanism, because we need to move forward, and we
Right.
can't move forward without
Yeah.
that decision.
Yeah.
So, but the main thing is $112,000. And then we
Yes.
just got to figure out where that's going to come from. So,
And you just have to decide if you're using the $32,000 fund balance plus the savings, or you just want to do a surcharge in the savings. That's the two options that I think we've discussed. Either one will get us there. To be honest, one makes more sense than the other to me now at this point. The use of fund balance makes a lot more sense to me. Again, it is a lot cleaner, a lot more efficient, a lot less mess to deal with, so.
mhm.
Can you remind me, Patrick, when it went to Parks, Lakes, and Trails, was it a unanimous vote?
Both the Parks, Lakes, and Trails and the Plan Commission were unanimous.
So I just need to ask this one more time, so I know in my head, if we were to utilize fund balance for the entire amount, and we expended only 10 of that 50 that we're holding, is it possible to reinvest those dollars into capital improvements or invest them into
Okay, let me, I
anything else?
think I get you, let me explain, let me try
Okay.
to understand what you were saying. If we reallocate $112,000 in fund balance, correct?
Yeah, if we
Okay.
were to utilize the
then
full
The
112,
savings,
or utilize fund
the
balance
savings
for the full
on an annual basis, towards the end of the budget year, the council would have to pass, I don't know if it's a resolution or just an action, that would dedicate or identify the savings in that account for capital improvements at the golf course.
Okay.
So what we basically do, transfer, thank you. I wasn't make sure, because she'd kill me if I said the wrong thing. We basically transfer the money out of the general fund on council action to the capital improvement fund and earmark it for capital improvements at the golf course.
Kathy, were you thinking about a motion or no? Any concerns?
I don't have any concerns. I mean, I'm not that opposed to a $2 surcharge, but then again, I don't go golfing all that much. So I would rather listen to others who go golfing and take their advice over mine.
Me personally, I'm not a golfer. However, I do like the idea of the fund balance thing where you wouldn't have the surcharge and you could figure out if that's a good thing
Right.
for later on or not. And we had some issues even with the airport funding way back when we should have done the fund balance and didn't, and it got to be kind of a more complicated thing, you know, so.
Yeah, If you do the full 112%, it takes your fund balance from 60.2% to 59.1%.
And-
Minor.
We aren't anticipating doing a surcharge for the youth, are we?
No, we would not do a surcharge. for
There wouldn't
these
be a
if we did
surcharge in that case then.
And if we do a surcharge, does that affect up above what our anticipated savings would be? I guess I don't know enough about
Probably
the
not
surcharge.
this year. Again, you have to be sensitive with rates and making sure that you stay competitive in the market. That's why we talked about, it starts to get a little messy because the operator usually looks at rates and tries to adjust them as they need to. This throws just a little bit of a different wrinkle in when you're setting your rates. So if the operator believes he needs to, let's just say, raise his rates $1 a round to be profitable, and to make that $50,000 number, that means then we've just raised rates next year $3. And that's starting to get into probably some competitive territories that we may not want to be in. But it's the only thing at the time we were trying to figure out how to do this, so.
Yeah, I really struggle with that. I just think we're gonna, some of these folks pay quite a bit, they pay memberships, they pay for carts, they pay for league, they pay for, so it kind of starts stacking on, and then you add, an added $2. I mean, I would rather, in that case, come back to the table with Zach to say, we need to somehow figure out how to generate a, revenue stream for capital improvement, let's, I don't know, take a buck around or something down the road, I don't know. And just increase the cost of a round. It just doesn't feel,
And based
Right.
on that discussion, I would recommend using a fund balance to fund this, and to then either use the savings from year to year or identify a different stream for capital improvements to fund the golf course. Because we do, no matter what we do tonight, we still need to fund capital improvements. It's going to be an issue. There are going to be sand traps to fix. There's going to be trees to replant. Most of our fencing is down. We should probably still have some fencing up. We haven't even begun to address, any of the tees or even the maintenance garage, what shape that's in, and we need to do some things there. So it's a great course. It works well, but like I said, the next thing coming is the irrigation system, because it's not great, but it's coming. So
I have another question. Patrick, does this, just the project in general, because I know we talked about using, I'm pointing to Dave, his Public Works staff to do some of the work, does it take away, because we had some questions from folks about, does it take away from other projects for Parks, Lakes, and Trails?
no, it does not at all. We would not sacrifice any of our core duties to do this. We would try to find the time when there's availability of time, and that comes. That's why we spread this over this year and next year. We're not anticipating this clubhouse to being open right away, April 1st, because the way we're trying to stage this and take it slowly. The big issue here is to get the building up before we can't use it anymore, because it's sitting there waiting. We got wood trusses sitting there that we need to probably put up, and hopefully they won't start to warp. But the real issue is to get the building up. If we have a budget, we can then start to nail down all of these things, get some of the contractors in. We have a floor plan that we need to go over, whether it's going to be 1 or 2 bathrooms, where the plumbing is going to be, where the desk for the golf people are going to be. So, we have a concept plan. These are all, the things we gave to the Plan Commission were concepts. Now we have to sit down and really figure out where everything sits. But yeah, we would, none of the parks won't suffer, snow plowing won't suffer, grass cutting won't suffer. We will do it when we can. And, Dave is fully aware of that, and he knows that he can find the time if and when only, and not sacrifice them, because we're not going to be constructing interior of a clubhouse when it's 8 inches of snow on the ground, or when the grass is 5 inches long. If there was no concern that I heard from Parks, Lakes, and Trails about that happening. If there's concern about that, there shouldn't be, because that's not the way we operate, that's not the way Dave approaches things, so I don't have a concern about that at all. What I do think is that if we can afford to have some time from Public Works, who are very talented and can do almost anything, that's better for us and we'll save more money. But if we don't, then we'll just contract. It just has to, it's just where we're gonna be. That's why these numbers are conservative. It doesn't include any bonus for not using, contractors and using staff. And hopefully we can drive these costs down a little bit.
And Dave, you feel like you can kind of work this into your department's workflow along the way?
Yep. A lot of, are anticipating, like Patrick said, a lot of the work will be done next year when we get our seasonals back. Our seasonal staff will do our lawn mowing and stuff, and that'll free up some of our full-timers to do it. But like you said, if the grass, if it's raining a lot last year, next year, and we're mowing grass every day, then we contract all what we expected to do in-house. So it's, like Patrick said, that's a conservative number. We can probably bring that number down with the stuff we do, but it just still won't sacrifice normal activity. We'll have a lot better idea. Like Patrick said, the building will go up this year, but that'll give us the winter to come up with the diagram for the building and go in the spring. The main concern is getting that building up before winter hits again. I anticipate we are gonna still have to probably buy some wood and some stuff that got twisted just in the past year,
Okay.
But if it goes through another winter, we might as well just throw it away because it's gonna be so damaged. So concern number one is getting approval to put the building up and get the building up, and then take the winter to come up with a really good design and plan out how it's gonna get finished off.
Any other comments?
Just that I would hate to see us waste what's already been purchased.
Well, I think the conversation's been good, and I think it's been thorough. And I think we've, we need to do something out there, and I think this is a good thing. So I'd make a motion that we go with the Castlewood Golf Course update, as Patrick explained, to the tune of $112,000, using $32,000 from the fund balance. Anyone care to second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I think we were talking about going all in on that, or were we?
Yeah,
Okay.
for the 112, which was the total amount, right?
Fun,
Yeah, there were two sets of discussions.
Yeah,
One
we
was
had-
using,
I just want to be clear.
there was two sets of discussion. One was using 32,000 in fund balance and then using the savings from 2021 and 2022 to fund this. The second discussion was not using the savings, taking $112 in fund balance and then earmarking whatever savings we have on an annual basis for future
Okay,
capital
I
improvements.
got to start over here then, because I knew the total was $112,000, but.
So, yeah,
Okay.
the discussion was, so we're at the point of funding. Does the council want to fund $112,000 out of fund balance? So to fund the entire amount out of fund balance? Which then the discussion was, okay, if we do that, what happens to your $40,000 annual savings? And the discussion there was that we take whatever savings we have on an annual basis and transfer it to the capital improvement fund for the golf course. Second discussion was that we use $32,000 in fund balance only and take the savings from 2021 and 22 to fund the rest of it.
That-
And then the third one, of course, is the surcharge.
It was clumsily done, but that was my motion, actually.
Okay.
So do we need a formal
Hang
amendment?
on one second here. Peter has comment, I guess.
Yeah, Your Honor, Acting Mayor, could you restate the motion? I'm not sure I am clear with you repeating from Patrick what motion is before the council.
It's not easy the way you described it. Let me get that piece of paper back here again. Oh, here.
Your Honor, if I might, is the current motion to approve the building using $32,000 from the fund balance?
Yes.
And that motion
And
has
still,
been
and
seconded.
then the rest of the money would come from the golf season savings and the anticipated operator subsidy from the second year, and this, we would not have to use the $2 surcharge.
Correct.
That would be my motion. But that's why I said the total was still $112,000.
Correct.
My second stands.
Okay, everybody okay with that? Karen, I wonder if we shouldn't have a roll call vote on that, please?
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
and Councilmember Valento.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone. Okay. Item 8, is there any discussion, any further discussion on any of these subjects? If not, we'll move on to staff updates. And we're going to start with Dave. We're just going to go right down around the line here, so. Dave,
Acting Mayor and Council, no updates tonight unless you have anything for me.
yeah, how's the water usage? What's our water consumption right now?
It dropped down to like 1.25 million, and now it's starting to climb back up again. We were out last week and issued about 75 citations or warnings, first-time offense warnings, so we have to re-educate and get the boards back out and probably work with Jackie and Dan to get some more Facebook, just letting people know that the ban is still on, but it's definitely creeping back up again.
Okay.
It did really well at the beginning, but it's you can tell people are either just lack of thinking that it's over with, or, you know, just starting back up again.
If you believe the forecasts, they're talking about the next few days, maybe getting some more rain. We'll see how it happens. But anyways, thanks for your update.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Ryan, do you have anything for us tonight?
City council members, just let you know that we finished the wear course on the 2021 street improvement project. That's the final lift of bituminous, so everything's been paved now. Obviously, we've got some restoration left through the project and some punch lists, and then the striping on Goodview and 210th, so that should be all done before school's open and started. So project fell well within the schedule that we anticipated and turned out really well. Fitzgerald Flats pre-construction meeting is this Thursday. I believe it's 53 units. Maybe I'm off a few one way or the other. That's a apartment building complex and finishing portion of Fitzgerald Road down by the government center there in the Headwaters Village area. So that's all I got, unless you got any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Ryan? Peter, do you have anything for us tonight?
Acting Mayor, Council, I do not have an update, but I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Peter? Patrick, you want to, you want any more time?
Oh, it's okay, as long as you're not reviewing me, it's fine.
Sure.
No, I only have one thing. We have some preliminary census data that shows the city has 20,611 residents in it, and that we've gained a little bit over 1,000 residential units since 2010. So we've grown not so much as population, but really in the amount of units that we have in the city. So that shows you that development is healthy, and still people want to come and build here no matter what we have to say and what we have to do. They want to be here. So, and that's important when we do talk about standards for development. And if you all remember, just really quickly, that one of the things that came out of the strategic plan was the overall desire for residents to have parks, trails, and all of that. That was one of the amenities that was very important, that brings development, and sidewalks. And all of that is important to family life, teaching your kid how to ride a tricycle or a bike on the sidewalk instead of the street. So some of those standards are important, and you will be discussing them in a workshop shortly. That's all I have. If you have questions, let me know.
Any questions for Patrick? Sandy, you're next. Thank you.
The only thing I have is utility billing. The last utility billing has happened with our third-party billing, so we are working on getting it completely in-house. We did end up sending a few bills through our new system just because we wanted to get them out because there was a two-week delay because of the reconciling between the two. And other than that, we're continuing to work on getting things going for this next quarter billing. That's going to be completely in-house.
That's good news. Thank you very much. Dan, do you have anything for us tonight?
I do. I have a save the date for the council, September 21st from 7 to 8:30. HKGI is going to be hosting a community visioning session here at the City Hall in relation to the downtown plan. That's still tentative at this point, but we're working to nail that date down. It'll be about approximately a 90-minute workshop here at City Hall for a community vision session for downtown planning.
And what time of the day? It's the 20?
7 o'clock at night to 8:30.
Okay, 7, okay.
And we'll get a formal invite out once that date is locked in, but that's the tentative date right now for the visioning session.
Okay, thank you.
Dan, will that be open to the community?
Yeah, it'll
Okay.
be out broader than that. We were going back and forth on calendar, and he had to confirm with a couple of his staff to make sure that worked on his end. So the 21st is what we're leaning towards at this point for a community. Yeah, it will be open to the whole community.
Will there be a remote participation option for that?
We have not discussed that. If it being in the community room, there may be a small challenge just to live broadcast up there since we're not organically set up for it, but I could see if I can't come up with a solution for it.
Think about numbers ticking up a little bit, and gathering.
Yep, absolutely.
Any other questions for Dan? Karen?
Thank you, council. I don't have any updates.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to mayor and city council updates. Councilmember Munson, you can be first.
No
Thank you.
updates.
No updates, okay. Councilmember Byström?
Just acknowledging some citizen communication, and then attended the YMCA Community Board meeting last week. We take June and July off, so this was our first meeting back from summer, or from the summer break. And just a couple of updates there. They're still at about 50% of pre-COVID capacity in terms of membership and participation. So putting a little bit of a financial strain on them. They did have a very successful and healthy summer, however, with their youth camps and children's programs, and just wanted to also acknowledge the wonderful park program that happened in partnership with the city. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Valento?
So for the Cable Commission, I was one of 2 people appointed to be on the bylaws committee. So me and that person will be meeting this Saturday to go over amendments. And then we will be hosting a workshop in September to go over those.
Wonderful, thank you. Myself, I attended the school board meeting last Thursday. It was a fairly short meeting. They had the superintendent's report, which is their plan for a safe startup again, and that's, I'm sure, going to be an evolving situation. And so they just talked about reporting COVID cases, remain home if you're ill, masks on buses. So far, masks are not mandatory, but physical distancing. But they were very adamant about the fact that that's going to be an evolving situation there. And then they went into closed session also to discuss the potential pending litigation that they had going there too. So that was all I have for tonight. So the next thing, we'll ask Councilmember Byström to read a motion for a closed session that we must be doing this evening. So Kathy, if you wouldn't mind doing that, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you. I move to close the meeting pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 13D.03 for labor negotiations. The closed session will be held in the Forest Lake Conference Room and will commence immediately. Once the closed session is completed, the City Council will reconvene the open meeting portion of tonight's City Council meeting in council chambers. As there will be no other items on the agenda, once back in session, the council will adjourn.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion to go into closed session?
I
Aye. Motion carries.